Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to the last edition of Grace and Gossip in 2025. I don't know about you, but I am glad to be moving out of this year. This year has been, it started difficult, and it is definitely, it's ending on a little bit of a better note, but it's definitely not a year that I am going to have any trouble saying goodbye to. And I think my sentiments are probably shared by quite a few people. What I do want to do is, first of all, thank everybody that has been a member of the XO family here. And then just, even people that are not a member of the family that have watched different interviews or conversations on this channel. I just want to say thank you. I appreciate each and every comment. It doesn't have to be a comment that agrees with me or not. I think that self-expression is really important, and that's one of the reasons that I do this channel. I definitely know that this channel, probably has not grown as fast as some because I refuse to kind of cater to the salaciousness. We have fun and we kiki a little bit, but I try to keep things positive as possible for the most part. While being honest and being authentic to the conversation. I want to touch on, before we, let go of just the pop culture, Grace and Gossip is a place for me to be able to kind of talk a little bit about pop culture. A lot of you guys know that I serve as an editor-in-chief for a magazine, Lennox and Parker. I also wrote as freelance writer for many, many publications, including Collider, Rolling Out, and a lot of those discussions you will still see on the channel in the archives. But I'm also an author, 3 books. My most recent one is Dear Alpha Female, It's Not Him, It's You. Also have How to Win When Shit Happens. That's super bright. And my first book is Under the Cherry Moon. It is a novel that I wrote after my father passed. And so for those of you that don't know, these are my 3 books: Under the Cherry Moon, How to Win When Shit Happens, and Dear Alpha Female. So I guess that is, I don't really look at them a lot and see, but that's me. I have another one coming out on dating codes that I'll be sharing with you guys this year that I'm excited about. But just to let everybody know a little bit about who I am, for those of you that do not know me personally and have not been a member here, that's a little bit about my background. So Grace and Gossip is on Mondays, and we're going to be doing this a little bit more in 2025. I actually have another news program that is going to be launched in 2025 along with the publisher of Lennox and Parker, so we can talk about current events, because that's still very much a part of who I am. Yes, I love the relationship conversations that we do on Ready to Love and some of the other reality shows, but I really love being able to speak to current events and being able to give a different perspective than we get. I do think it's really important to have the African-American female perspective from an authentic place. In media, we know that there's so many African-American women that were a part of larger media platforms that were let go this year. And that is scary, because I think media really is a voice. It's a powerful institution. It gives us a voice, and it helps inform our people. And so if we're not a part of that conversation, that is scary. And so seeing that, my publisher, who's my partner, he and I are both co-owners in Lennox and Parker. And so we are going to have a new show that you guys will be able to watch right here on YouTube that we're really excited about. So I look forward to sharing that with you guys on a regular basis. I know we're talking about doing that at least twice a week, so we can have conversations on current events and keep up. But for today, I wanted to get into some of the topics that are pressing as we prepare to end this year. If you guys have things that you want to chime in, feel free to do that. But I want to start with a story that I did tackle for Lennox and Parker that has continued to grow. And that is on singer, pop artist Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj, the article is titled From Queen to Cautionary Tale, Nicki Minaj, JD Vance, and the Dangerous Politics of Crossover Fame. And I wrote this article because those of you that have been a part of this channel, you know that my job before kind of focusing solely on writing has been as a celebrity publicist. And so although I have not worked directly with Nicki Minaj, I have worked with people who have been a part of her camp. And for a long time, anyone who's been a fan of hip hop has known that Nicki Minaj was the only female voice that we heard in hip hop, period. I think it was a reign of around 11 years where she was the only representation of a female's voice in hip hop. And before that, we heard from females. There was Eve, there was Queen Latifah, there was MC Light. There were other Salt and Pepper, obviously, Oaktown 357. There were, Roxanne, Shantae. There were other females that were a part of hip hop culture, but for some reason, in the 90s, we saw that that influence kind of slowly disappear, and the focus was put more on the sexy female artist, and we lost the hip hop, the voice in hip hop, because really R&B and hip hop kind of merged. So you would have Ashanti on a hook, but you wouldn't hear a lot of females actually as the femc. And so Nicki became that lone voice, and I'm the first to say Nicki is very talented. I work with a lot of artists that work with her. I actually work with a few, represented for a long while, a songwriter that wrote, for her quite often. And I think she's very talented, very, very talented. But anytime someone holds that post for that long without any threat of anyone else being a part of that conversation, I remember like every year at the BET Hip Hop Awards, which I worked several years, you would hear these other names mentioned that weren't really a part of the hip hop scene. I think Rashida, some other women, and there are other female rappers. I'm just talking about from a commercial perspective. So I know that we had Rhapsody and different artists that were, kind of underground and had a lot of respect from that community. But commercial rappers, you did not see anyone besides Nicki Minaj. And I'm just going to read a little bit of this to you guys. I think this, because we can talk about, and we will, but we can talk about what has happened with her as of late. There's been kind of like a ongoing spiraling out of control. She's been at odds with first other female rappers that started to come into the scene and started to have some success. And then it went from there to the gatekeepers, alleged gatekeepers in the industry. And then it has gone on to where at this point it's fans, it's anyone that disagrees with her. But I'm going to read you guys 2 paragraphs from this article. You can find the entire article on linuxandparker.com. Black celebrity has always come with conditions, but crossover fame comes with consequences few are willing to name out loud. For Black artists, success is often celebrated only as long as it remains palatable, profitable, and politically useful to audiences outside their communities. When that balance shifts, the fall is rarely about talent and almost always about allegiance. Nicki Minaj's recent alignment with figures like JD Vance did not happen in a vacuum, nor did it emerge overnight. It is the culmination of a long and visible unraveling that reveals how narrow the margin for Black humanity becomes once crossover validation replaces community grounding. What we are witnessing is not just a personal misstep, but a cautionary tale about how quickly cultural power can be repurposed into political leverage against the very audience that built it. For years, Nicki Minaj represented the rare exception within hip hop rather than a reflection of its possibilities. She was positioned as a singular female voice in a male-dominated genre, celebrated not just for her talent, but for her willingness to occupy a space no one else was allowed to enter. That isolation was framed as empowerment, but it also came with an unspoken burden. Being the only one meant being the standard, the gatekeeper, and the shield all at once. As long as Nicki remained unmatched, her dominance was unquestioned, and her relationship with her audience felt reciprocal. The movement that exclusivity disappeared, the fragility of crossover fame began to reveal itself. Basically, once Cardi B was kind of the catalyst for this, Cardi B started to get attention. Nicki started to lash out at her. That erupted in a long time feud that actually reared its ugly head again recently when Cardi basically was preparing to put out her second album. She released a single. Her and Nicki got into a very ugly verbal dispute on Twitter where Nicki talked badly about Cardi's children. It was shameful. Now, understanding that Nicki had that position for 11 years and also was probably undoubtedly one of Cardi's mentors, you know, one of those people that she looked up to, seeing someone from that position be disrespectful was difficult for most people. I think people were trying to figure out why she was like that. Another issue is that Nicki refused to ever acknowledge that she had sheroes and mentors in music. You know, she wanted us to believe that her ascent to fame was totally focused, you know, totally the responsibility of herself and other male influences. She never had a problem acknowledging males. You know, she was signed to Young Money at the time, which was owned by Lil Wayne. And she had no problem collaborating with men. She had no problem bigging them up and, you know, giving them praise and being a peer. But she did not feel comfortable doing that with other female artists, which is a problem. Now, she would do it with pop artists, but not other female rap artists. She would focus on, you know, singing. She did things with Ariana Grande, with different white audiences, but she would not collaborate with another African-American female hip hop artist until much later down the road when she did with Ice Spice. Now, I think most people would probably agree that if you're looking at talent wise and who she would collaborate with, for her to not collaborate with another artist besides Ice Spice was really weird. Like, she did a record where Nicki was on it. I know it's Motorsport with, but I know that Offset and the Migos asked her to do that, but there was just a lot of issue. It's not really about Nicki Minaj. My conversations are never really about the artist. It really is about what's driving this force. And I think a lot of times, thank you, Hey You There, for all those African-American, well, you know, hip hop artists, definitely RIP to Left Eye and Latina Reed. You know, I'm a part of the TLC family, which is definitely Left Eye is a huge part of that legacy. But all these other artists that you're naming, Trina, Princess, and Diamond with Crime Mob, who I actually worked with when they first came out, actually represented them for a short period of time. Crime Mob, or was a part of the agency that represented them for a short period of time. I'm not going to necessarily acknowledge Iggy Azalea. But yes, all these other artists, for Nicki to have an issue with so many of them, it really speaks more to the fact that the industry is so male dominated that they did not want there to be female voices. For so long, men dominated the industry, and the only time a woman could come out and be celebrated was when she was co-signed by a male clique or male group. Each male group had their female that was representing them. So we think about Eve, who I mentioned earlier, and she was kind of co-signed by Rough Riders, right, and DMX. And then you had Nicki Minaj, who was co-signed, you know, by Lil Wayne initially. And then Remy Ma, who was with Terror Squad, you know what I mean? So it was this idea that in order for a woman to come and be received and welcomed and even celebrated by female fans, there had to be male validation involved. And that's a problem. And I think that is part of what caused this attitude that Nicki had. Also, you do have to realize when you are in that spot for so long and you cross over, there's this unspoken adage, you know, accolade that comes when African-American artists are able to exceed their audience and go to the pop audience, which is just the popular audience, but it's just a crossover audience, right? And that crossover audience does mean that they will be able to have bigger endorsement deals, but it also means that there often is the loss of authenticity. And I think we see that a lot. So when Nicki saw that she was, you know, having to share the spot with other African-American artists, she started to lash out at them. And then she did something recently, which was very just unsettling and disappointing in that she went over and did an appearance with JD Vance and Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk. Now, I didn't talk about the situation with Charlie Kirk much on this channel because it is highly political and just polarizing, and I'm not going to go into too much of that, but we do know that Charlie Kirk was unalived earlier this year, but a lot of the conversation that was a part of his spiel and a part of his campaign and part of his platform was anti minority, in many ways. Now, I know there's a lot of people that argue that, but I think the vast majority of people saw a lot of his conversation as very, I'm trying to think of a way to say it that's not just racially motivated, right? There are numerous videos of him having conversation that feels very, as a Black woman who has a Black son, who came from a family with Black men and Black women, to hear a white man saying that Black men are not good fathers and saying that Black men don't do this and Black families struggle with this, to me was not positive, and it was very it got a negative attention, right? It earned a lot of negative attention. It earned a lot of divisive attention. It really was not a conversation that was rooted in unity. It was one that was based and rooted in division. And to see Nicki Minaj go over and share a stage with his widow and JD Vance sent a loud message, to the Black community. And a lot of them took it very personal. I don't know if you guys are aware, everyone watching tonight, but there was an issue. Nicki Minaj, it says here, wipes Instagram after losing 10 million followers overnight. That was a response to her being seen with JD Vance and Erica Kirk, losing 10 million followers on Instagram. And I don't think that's just about followers. That's also about influence. It's about power. It's about money, right? Because even though I don't know the endorsement deals that she currently has, if you have that many followers, you have people that are paying you for your influence. I would wager that her appearance with JD Vance and Erica Kirk was a financial decision, right? And she was paid to be a representative of the African American community, someone that supposedly represented hip hop, to come over and stand with them and make a stand. Unfortunately, that backfired. And not only did she lose 10 million followers, but there is a petition, which is ridiculous. This petition to deport Nicki Minaj to Trinidad with almost 50,000 signatures. And I definitely don't think there's any fear of her being deported to Trinidad, but even worse and even more culturally, I guess, worrisome there are a lot of African American leaders and advocates for civil rights that have spoken out and basically said that they feel like she should no longer be a part of the Black community. Well, I have to say this. I do not think that anyone has the right to remove someone from their community, but I do think that her behavior is a sign of something a lot deeper, that there's a problem. I think I ended this, and like I said, you can read the entire article on Lennox and Parker, but I ended it by saying the tragedy of Nicki Minaj is not simply ego or ambition. It is a psychological toll of being the first, the only, and the token for too long. Black excellence is often rewarded with isolation. In entertainment and corporate America alike, crossing over frequently means crossing away. The bridge is rarely designed for return. By standing on stages with people who once labeled her a bad influence. And that's a crazy thing because Charlie Kirk, there is video footage of him speaking against her and saying that he sees her as a bad influence on little Black girls. Now, whether or not I would agree with him because I don't believe that Nicki is always presented the best example or role model for young Black women, but I don't need for me as a Black woman, I don't need a white man to tell me who or what makes a good role model for my family, for my children, for my nieces, for my sisters. We don't need that, right? So I think that was out of place. And I think it was in poor taste. But to see her stand on that stage, I think that was a message more towards the community that she feels abandoned her by supporting other Blacks. And I think the problem is when you isolate people and you make people feel like there's only room for one Black, right? Because that's not Nicki Minaj's problem. It's not Nicki Minaj's fault that white America or crossover pop culture will accept one female artist at a time, or that there's always that one, and they make it so that there is only room for one. Like, oh, we have one of those already. We have a Beyonce, right? And so that is a lifeless problem that is, like I said, not just in entertainment, but it's also in corporate America. I remember that very well from my days in corporate America. They're a lot of times African-American workers or employees are pitted against one another to believe that there's only room for the one token Negro, right? And so when you do that, you put a lot of burden on that person, and there is intraracial conflict because of that, right? So I said, by standing on stages with people who once labeled her a bad influence on young girls, Nicki did more than make a polarizing business move. She confirmed the very fears her core audience had long been wrestling with. The image burned what little remained of her cultural credibility. It is a familiar story. We've seen it before. They say God help the child who has their own, but no one warns the one who abandons their own. And I think I've seen that happen in entertainment, because what happens is a lot of times artists are able to cross over because there's such a love from their core audience. I would use an example of Outkast. Outkast is one of those few groups that have been able to have crossover success. But what makes Outkast still so special, they were just inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. I've had the privilege of being able to work with them, but what I think makes them so special and makes them timeless and makes them just as special now as they were in the early 2000s. I remember when I was working in corporate America, my boss, who I had so much respect for, was a Jewish lady named Alice Blue. And Alice came to work one day and she said, "Crystal, have you heard this new rap album?" She said, their name is Outkast and they're amazing. And I was just like, yeah, I've heard them. They are, but it's like when others discover it, they love the fact that we love it, right? Outkast is huge because they were authentic to their Atlanta roots. But what makes them continue to be just as celebrated is they continue to be authentic. Big Boy and Andre both, even though they're very different artists, have both managed to maintain the respect of their core audience. Once a Black artist loses the respect of their core audience, that crossover audience is soon to go, right? Because they love it as long as we like it, right? And so at least that's what I've seen. You guys can let me know what you think. But I think that what we're going to see with Nicki Minaj is that once the powers that be see that she's lost the support of her African-American core audience, they're going to quickly leave, because that audience is fickle. But what is always going to be there for you is your core. And I think we see a lot of artists do that. You step over and attempt to, you get too excited about crossing over and you abandon your core base, and then you cannot come back. I'm not going to name any names. I can think of a great example right now that I had an opportunity to work with, but I don't want this to be anything negative. I'm just using it as a cautionary tale. So check out that article in Lennox and Parker. I think it's one of the things that we will see definitely play out moving forward into 2026. And I think it's sad, because I think Nicki Minaj is a very talented actress. I mean, actress, yes, because she definitely does a lot of acting. But I think she's a huge talent. But unfortunately, ego and misguided and being focused on the wrong things and not having anyone in your core team that you trust enough to keep you grounded, has her making some decisions as of late that I think are going to cost her her career moving forward. And it's really unfortunate because at a time when there are so many female artists, hip hop artists now that are being celebrated, she could be really being embraced and celebrated as the one that kept the genre going before Cardi and Lotto and Megan and Coi Leray and all these young female artists would have definitely embraced her with open arms, and definitely kind of like touted her as the GOAT and but she was not willing to share the stage. And so now, unfortunately, she is probably not going to have a spot on the stage anymore. So moving on to a more positive topic, I wanted to talk to you guys tonight on this last Monday of 2025 about what I think is probably the most brilliant comedy piece this year. Dave Chappelle's Comedy King Solomon brings perspective to a year of racial polarization, political chaos, and just mayhem. Definitely this special, if you did not see it, I would suggest you see it. Again, this entire piece that I wrote is on lennoxandparker.com. And I welcome you guys to go and visit the site and see what we are doing on the site. I think that this article is, it was important to me because after watching I'm bad, I didn't realize it was still up there. After watching the comedy special, which he released without fanfare, it was not advertised. It just all of a sudden was up on Netflix. I watched it twice, and I sat down to write this article. And I called him Comedy's King Solomon. Comedy King Solomon brings perspective to a year of racial polarization, political chaos, and Black disillusionment. What I love about Dave Chappelle is that his perspective, to me, I think comedians are probably the most intellectual people on the planet. Anytime you can take pain and turn it into a vehicle for people to be healed, laughter, not just laughter for yourself, but laughter for others. A lot of times it's probably laughter for others, but when you can take something that's horrible and take and change the lens of it, I think that's genius. But when you're able to change the lens and teach, that's next level. And I think that is what Dave Chappelle does. Not only does he change the lens of things that are happening in pop culture, but he also is able to use those opportunities to teach and inform. And I think he is the definition of Black excellence at this point, because no one is going to sit and listen to a lecture, right? And we're learning, as I learned from interviewing Jamal Bryant earlier this year, that pastors even have less, the Black church has less of an influence on our communities today. But you put up a comedy special on Netflix from Dave Chappelle, and most people are going to listen to it, right? And so Dave was able to talk about some things that are affecting us right now. Definitely, we all know that we are in a political tailspin. He was able to expertly and very subtly touch on some hypocrisies that have been going on with Pakistan and Israel. And he addressed that in a very clever way. He also addressed the uncomfortable conversation in our culture of the Diddy documentary. And I think you guys know I did a piece on that as well, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. But when this documentary came out, first of all, this whole court case has turned Black America on its head. And I think it's bigger than Diddy, just like I said, it was bigger than Nicki Minaj, because this is representing another example of someone that had been able to achieve the epitome of what is Black excellence. I was talking to one of my friends that's in the music industry, a high level exec, and he said, we're not going to have any heroes pretty soon. We don't have the same luxury as white America, where they could lose a Harvey Weinstein, but they still have, you know, many, many more examples of excellence and examples of success, where you take away a Bill Cosby, you take away the legacy of a Michael Jackson, by tainting that. And then you also do the same thing with Puffy and or Sean Diddy Combs. And you know, you start looking at and seeing that there are very few representations of success, high level success in our communities that are not besmirched by in some way. And I think, and I personally am very, I agree with that. I think that, you know, there's cause to be concerned if our legends are taught, our legends are restrictive legends, right? But on the other hand, right is right and wrong is wrong. And so I think that the industry in itself had been holding a lot of secrets. And over the last few years, because of social media and the fact that there's not really gatekeepers on social media, a lot of things have come out about the industry. I think this whole thing with Diddy started with the Me Too movement because it changed the trajectory of the way things have been done. And it kind of shook up that good old boys club, because for so long, people did not question men in power. And after that movement, it kind of opened the floodgates to where people were questioning men in power, Black, white, Asian, whatever. Men in power are no longer this untouchable ideal, right? And so, you know, if people are questioning white men in power, they're definitely going to be questioning Black men in power. But Dave Chappelle approached the issue from a point that made him basically a hero on both sides, because I feel like in conversations on social media, you had one half of the Black culture saying that 50 Cent was wrong to put out a documentary on another Black man while he was down. And then you have, on the other hand, you had people saying that 50 Cent did a justice to these victims who didn't have a place, didn't have a voice, and did not have, you know, anyone to stand up for them. And finally, someone is not afraid of, you know, a man in power that's been abusing his power. I definitely tend to err on the side of argument B. I don't think that 50 did anything wrong to Diddy. I think that Diddy did it to himself. But I do appreciate Dave Chappelle's perspective. Like I said, he just gives you a different lens to look through. I think two things can be true. I think I say that a lot on this channel. Two things can be true. Seeing the history of the Mann Act, which actually also was a big part of the way that R. Kelly was able to be incarcerated. This law was created, as it seems like most laws are created for us, not for others. And this, he talks, if you haven't seen the special, I would suggest you watch it, because I think there was an opportunity for both sides to come to an agreeable place, you know. So you had people speaking out against 50 Cent and in support of the documentary, like Marlon Wayans, and there was a lot of different celebrities that Cedric the Entertainer, that, you know, that basically said that they did not agree with, you know, tearing another man down. And then you had other people saying, well, hey, this happened. And so Dave Chappelle was able to say, this is wrong, right? So he made some jokes, definitely distancing himself from the actions, but also saying that we have to look at history and realize that this Mann Act was created for Jack Johnson, who was the first Black heavyweight champion of the world, the first Black man that was able to get to that level. And we know that there was a certain amount of prestige that came with being the Black heavyweight of the world. And it actually made me, just a side note, it made me even appreciate the genius of Eddie Murphy even more, because if you guys remember in Harlem Nights, the movie Harlem Nights, the character Jack Johnson was a part of the movie. And then that guy that played Jack Johnson, I can't remember his name. This is just a side note, but he was in one of the documentaries that was on OWN about families with bad secrets. He married a very, very young woman, and she had a daughter that she had given up for adoption. Anyway, it's in one of those documentaries. But he did Eddie Murphy, who wrote, produced, and directed Harlem Nights, um, did have that character and did shine some light on Jack Johnson and showed how the white America was really championing this white man that was fighting Jack Johnson and really hoping that they would have a hero and a white man that could beat up this black man. But in any case, the Mann Act was created because not only did Jack Johnson beat the white man up, but he continued to be very, very successful. And the only weakness that they could find was that Jack Johnson liked white women. And so this Mann Act was created to keep him from, to basically catch him. And so they were able to catch him on the Mann Act, which, for somehow they were able to loop him into going across state lines with his white woman, right? And Dave Chappelle has this way of being able to tell the story in a way where you are learning, but you're not even realizing that you're being taught something and that you're seeing the big picture of it. So I think two things can be true. I think Diddy can be wrong. And I think that there are forces working to expose and punish and humiliate Black talent that are doing the same thing as others, right? But I think for us, your weaknesses show up in our way for people to take advantage, right? And that's what this is. That's what this is. I think that we can see both sides of it. I think Diddy was doing, one of the things that Dave pointed out is that he'd been doing what he's been doing for a long time. These allegations were not new. It shocked me that the freak-offs that he was having with Cassie went on with one particular person. He was with Cassie for 11 years. It sounds like the freak-off started pretty quickly after that, because there was one guy who had been in a relationship, had been servicing them consistently for 8 years. So this is not anything that he just started doing in 2020. This behavior, and I know just from being around, there was a long history of some of the complaints. Most of the complaints that I saw in the documentary, The Reckoning, I wasn't surprised because I had heard them before. I guess what was surprising is seeing it all in a collective piece, right? And then it became a little overwhelming. But I think most people knew that there was physical abuse. I think most people knew that there was, I don't know about SA, but definitely some freaky stuff happening that may or may not be legal, right? Drug abuse. Everybody knew that there was drug abuse. So, and I don't think anybody was under the impression that artists that had left that label were treated fairly. But I think when you put it all together and you give a motive, I think it has a different, it has a different ending. Speaking of the documentary, today it was released that Diddy's sons, Justin and Christian, who are pictured right there, are doing their own documentary, which is coming out in 2026. So if you thought that we were going to be able to get away from everything happening with this documentary, you're wrong. It's going to be happening well into 2026. I did see that Diddy's lawyers have petitioned for him to be released based on the fact that the judge acted irresponsibly, basically saying that the judge acted as a juror. That is a crazy defense, because just listening to the jurors that were featured in the documentary, I don't even know how that conviction can stand. Hearing a juror saying that a man and a woman being physically abused, that is a couple of people that love each other just not being able to get the relationship right. And then another juror that said she, made eye contact and she could relate to how Sean Combs felt. because some of the testimonies were so ridiculous that she could relate to him. That was just very strange that that conviction could stand. But I just don't think we're going to be able to get rid of this. Justin and Christian have a documentary coming on the Zeus Network. I don't know what you guys know about the Zeus Network, but from what I know, it's kind of like a no holds barred. There's not really the same type of, I would say, fact checking and probably credibility requirements that would be necessary for Netflix. So I expect this one to be much less objective than the one that was on Netflix. I also expect it to have a backlash from 50 Cent, because as most people know, 50 said he has a lot more footage, and he is going to be probably retaliating that way. Also, Christian, who is Christian, to me is just like, it looks exactly like his father. He looks like his dad. My God. It is almost uncanny. That is Diddy's son with the late Kim Porter. But this news went viral today. Sean, according to People magazine, Sean Diddy Combs' sons, Justin and Christian, will star in a docuseries about disgraced father's trial and conviction. Justin, who is 31, and I didn't realize Christian was only 19. That is kind of difficult to hear, because 19 is a baby, you know what I mean? So him, and as you guys, if anyone saw the documentary, Diddy is putting pressure on them to basically stand up for him. He's like, I'm not supposed to say anything, but you are supposed to be saying something. God doesn't want me to talk, but it doesn't mean that you can't talk, Justin, and you can't talk, Christian. So a 19-year-old and who looks just like his father, who obviously, idolizes his father. I just hope the public has some grace for him. I don't know if that they will. He did put up make a statement that he wanted to, no, he didn't say wanted. He said he was going to slap 50 Cent on sight on his father. And instead of saying on God, he said on his father, which is very unsettling, because his father has referred to himself as Jesus Christ, or saying that he could only be compared to Jesus Christ and that he is a God. So hearing him say on my father, it's just unsettling. But yeah, it says, okay, all right. So they have, People magazine had his age wrong. The girls are 19. Okay, thank you. I thought, I was just like, if he's 19, that is crazy. Yeah, thank you. Hey, you there. People magazine had it wrong. So the twins are 19. Christian is 27. Okay, so that's cool. He's grown. He's a grown man. He's a grown boy. He's a grown boy. But yeah, he was born in, it's like he's born 1998, a year older than my son. Okay, so they have said that he said he wanted to slap 50 Cent, and he and his brother, his older brother, who was 31, are going to put out this documentary on Zeus. They don't have a date yet. It says in the trailer, which was shared to Instagram by the Zeus Network, founder Lemuel Plummer, Justin is on the couch of a screening room and is joined by Christian as a flurry of headlines about their father's crimes whiz by. And Lemuel basically is saying that they are going to, many have judged, okay, who is this? This is not Lemuel. This is one of the boys. Many have judged both him and us based on accusations, conspiracy theories, and false narratives that have spiraled into absurdity on social media. We stand united, supporting you every step of the way. We hold on to the truth, knowing it will prevail. And we miss and love you, Dad. Quincy, Justin, Chance, Jesse, and Delilah. And Justin gave a statement to the court asking that his father be given a second chance. I did not know that. He says, a second chance at life, a second chance to right his wrongs, a second chance to be the man he truly is. Justin added that his father is a superhero who has changed for the better. Your Honor, I believe my father still has so much more to give the world, and more importantly, so much more to give his children. Justin spent Christmas Day with his dad, and says they talked and caught up with each other. They talked about dealing with the hard times now, reflecting on the past. Diddy is scheduled to be released June 4th, 2028. So that is, I'm not surprised that that Justin spent Christmas with him, but that's rough. That's just rough. It's still, even though they're 31 and 27, still rough because those are his sons. You know what I mean? So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. What do you think about this documentary? I'm sure people will see it. And kudos to Lemuel Plummer, the owner of Zeus, because that's probably going to take his network to the next level. This is a time where anything goes. Streaming platforms are basically, changing the way we consume and digest information. And so Lemuel definitely has the big one with this one. His comment says, immerse yourself in the world of Zeus, where creativity and innovation meet. Our latest project showcases the cutting edge technology that's changing the way we experience news. Indeed. Let me know what you guys think about that. I almost hate that this is happening, but hey, had to. I guess it had to. I mean, they have to speak their side of the story. I had another article, and I don't even think I pulled a picture for this. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. But I guess I need to. I need to share with the people. I am an African American woman that is irritated by the fact that every time a Black man that is, celebrated or in power makes a mistake chooses to fumble his bag, be it his financial bag, his family bag. It irritates me that who he chooses to lay down with is always brought into the conversation, as opposed to just the man making a mistake, right? I get irritated at the fact that I feel like Black women have to be a part of the conversation, even when we're not a part of the conversation. And I think, I know that there are some of you that will agree with me. There's some that may not. But this irritates me as someone that was raised in the 80s and 90s and, raised in the 80s and constantly, anytime a Black man makes a mistake, who he's married to or who he sleeps with, that person does or doesn't is a part of why he's in the situation he is. So when University of Michigan football coach Sharon Moore was caught cheating on his white wife with a 24-year-old white assistant, I think that I just get tired of always hearing, well, if he was with a Black woman, that wouldn't have happened. We don't want to be in that conversation. We don't want to be in this conversation. This is not our business, and we are minding our own business, and we don't care. And I just think that, every time something like this happens, be it, Tiger Woods or a Black man who has made it clear that his preference is not for the Black community, I'm tired of those allegations being brought up, or people comparing the comparisons and contrasts being brought up. I started this article. Again, this is on Lennox and Parker. If you're interested in reading the entire article, you can visit the site. I say, when the news of Michigan head football coach Sharon Moore broke, my first reaction wasn't shock, it was annoyance. Because as a Black woman, I already knew what was coming. The Facebook threads, TikTok rants, and IG memes with quiet disappointment turned inward, heavy with the familiar references or whispers. This wouldn't have happened if he had a Black wife. Or even if the mistress was Black, she would not have exposed him. These predictable responses don't come from outside our community. It always comes from within. From Black women who are tired, protective, and often disappointed by the men we've chosen, we're told to celebrate as symbols of progress. Moore's rise as a 39-year-old Black man becoming head coach at a historic Division I program felt significant. It felt like progress. It felt like one of those moments to root for harder because so few Black men are given that kind of opportunity. I understand why many of us felt pride, but lately I've learned that pride does not require ownership, and representation does not mean responsibility. The narrative is not only inaccurate, it's grossly unfair to us. Black women are not moral lifelines for broken men. Can I say that again? Black women are not moral lifelines for broken men. We are not responsible for managing character, preventing corruption, or absorbing the fallout of choices we did not make. A man who lacks integrity will lack it regardless of who he marries. Infidelity does not disappear because the wife is Black, and abuse of power does not soften because the household looks like ours. In short, we did not miss out on anything. Sharon Moore is not one of us. He is not a symbol that failed us. He is a man that failed himself. So let's release him. Release him from being a marker of Black progress. Release him from being a referendum on Black women's worth. And release ourselves from the idea that we are supposed to feel grief every time a Black man in power proves he is not ready for it. This was not a Black failure. This was a character failure. And I just had to say that because I'm just tired of hearing almost like a Black woman is supposed to save a man from himself. Oh, if he had a Black woman, that would not have happened. Well, we are not involved in that. He did not want a Black wife, and a Black wife did not want him. So whatever he did is on him, and it's not a reflection of our community. It is a reflection of a man who had no self-control and fumbled his life. And that is not a reflection that we should absorb. And so I just wanted to say, I'm tired. I don't want to hear that anymore. And I'm sure a lot of my sisters are tired. And so, hey, we've moved on. We are releasing that in 2026. That is what I would like to say. Yes, Sparky, there is another documentary coming, except this time it is coming from Justin and Christian, Diddy's sons. And let's be clear, for any of you in that Diddy 50 Cent stuff, it's crazy. I'm sure this is Diddy's voice coming through his sons, because he's not been able to be, he's been, everything he's tried to do has been stopped. He's tried to get bail numerous times. He just tried to have the conviction turned. It was turned down. And so we know that he and Justin went and visited with him on Christmas. So Justin goes and visits with him on Christmas, and then all of a sudden this documentary comes. And I felt like I did also a piece on this from Lennox and Parker, which said, the real reckoning isn't about Diddy, it's about us. How the backlash to 50 Cent's Netflix doc exposes a culture still loyal to celebrity power. I have just been enjoying, and that's part of what I enjoy about Lennox and Parker, is I am able to really write from a perspective that I feel like is missing in Black culture. Um, I feel like I'm just going to read a little piece of this and then move on to my next topic. This is how the backlash to 50 Cent's Netflix doc exposes a culture still loyal to celebrity power over truth, accountability, and the safety of women. When 50 Cent announced he was producing a docuseries on Sean Diddy Combs, most people treated it like another chapter in a long-running feud. For years, 50 has done the bulk of the verbal sparring while Diddy maintained his silence publicly. But let's be clear, he did not maintain his silence behind closed doors. So when The Reckoning finally dropped on Netflix, many expected it to be petty, one-sided, or just another internet spectacle. Instead of addressing decades of allegations, documented patterns of manipulation, intimidation, and emotional damage, the conversation online has been about whether 50 Cent is a sellout, a hater, or even a coon. People are debating the producer, not the content. Loyalty to a celebrity myth is overshadowing basic human empathy. I just feel like this is not about 50 and about Diddy. It is about the fact that we, as long as someone is successful, we are okay with them getting away with, whatever they're doing. And if they're not successful, then we're okay. At the end of the day, The Reckoning is not just about Sean Combs. It is a mirror. And most people don't like what they see. We say we care about victims, but ignore their pain when the accused is someone we've danced to, admired, or mythologized. We say we want accountability, but only when it doesn't threaten our nostalgia. We say we've evolved, but defend the exact systems and behaviors we claim to be dismantling. The documentary forced us to look at the truth. The reaction forced us to look inside and admit that we still don't want to. The question is no longer what did he do? The question is, why are we so determined to protect him from the consequences? And until we answer that honestly, the real reckoning isn't happening on Netflix. It is happening in the culture that made him untouchable. And that is all I have to say about that for today. We will definitely be back, obviously, in 2026, talking more about Diddy, unfortunately. And I have a feeling that others are going to be added to this. And I think, just like I said with that article about Sharon Moore, like, just because someone is Black and falls short does not mean that that is a reflection of us. It does not mean that it's a reflection of our community. And I think we have to stop looking at it that way and feeling like, oh, all of our Black leaders are failing. There are a lot of African Americans that are misusing wealth and power, just like there are a lot of Caucasians doing the same thing, a lot of Asians doing the same thing, a lot of Indians doing the same thing, a lot of women doing the same thing. So I think when people are called out and exposed, as opposed to fighting to protect them, we need to acknowledge the people that are doing the right thing in those fields and not being celebrated. And we also don't need to take it as a mark or a spot on the record of the Black community, because it's not. We're not all connected. I think that in many ways, we many of us may be focused on some of the same goals, but at the end of the day, Diddy did not share the same goals as many people in our community. At this point, it appeared that his goals were mainly about himself. So that does not speak to us, nor does it represent us. And I think the same thing with Sharon Moore and anyone else. Lastly, before I get out of here for 2025, and I'm going to be back on Wednesday for New Year's Eve, we're going to do a very special dating diaries based on the dating things that we've seen on Ready to Love over the last seasons. But I want to talk a little bit about this, the Cult of the Real Housewife, that is going to air on New Year's Day, along with Second Chance Love with Chili and Matthew, which will also air on New Year's Day. And so I would encourage you guys to watch both. If you want to feel good, watch a little bit of Chili and Matthew on Second Chance Love. And then if you want a little scandal, go ahead and turn over to TLC later and watch the Cult of the Real Housewife. I will just say this. I had the opportunity to view all three parts of this docuseries, and this is basically sharing some truth about Mary Cosby, who is one of the housewives on Salt Lake City. I don't know how many of you guys watch that franchise, but when I tell you this documentary is wild, it is wild. It is definitely worth watching. It is definitely worth tuning into, because I'm going to do a review of the documentary. But it is definitely crazy. This is another situation. I feel like after the reckoning with Sean Combs, I think that some lawyer someplace is going to figure out a way to try him on some things. And I feel like after seeing The Cult of the Real Housewife and people get a chance to really sit with it, I think that they're going to find some actual legal issues with Mary Cosby. First of all, she is in charge of a church that feels very much like a cult. People are speaking about her as though she is the gateway to God. She took the church over from her grandmother, who passed away, and she married her grandmother's husband, which means that she married her step grandfather. It is, well, Makeup and Mimosa says documentaries are so good at manipulating the audience, but I think they're able to tap into the emotion of the audience and really bank on it. I also think that with documentaries, you have investigative journalism, which has a little bit more, the legal world is very black and white. When you are talking about investigative journalism, things are not necessarily black and white. So where something may not be admissible because it may not fit into a very narrow definition of a certain law, when it comes to journalism, you can actually tell the story or share the information. When you're in a court of law, you cannot, yes, I believe Morgan Freeman did that as well. Yes. Yes. But when you're in a court of law, it's not admissible, right? It's inadmissible. And yes, Woody Allen as well. It's not admissible unless it is not relevant to the case, unless it fits within a very narrow box of what that law entails. But when it comes to documentaries, you're able to give context. And so even though it may not necessarily be illegal, it can definitely be immoral, it can definitely be unethical, but there just may not be a particular law that speaks to that particular crime. And so you're able to really hone in on the court of public opinion, even if you're not able to focus on what may be outside the legal scope, right? But I also think that the reason that it is able to be effective is because sometimes that court, like when I did jury duty a few weeks ago, you guys, and the case that I was on was a child molestation case, and there were things that happened that were outside of what you could prove, like outside of what the law spoke to, right? So, for example, in the case that we were trying, they asked, had this happened on more than one occasion? Well, no. The man touched the young woman in an inappropriate way one time, but there was another time where he was lying on the sofa and fell asleep with his body positioned on hers. Well, to a child that is claiming that has happened to them before, that would feel intrusive, but that doesn't necessarily fit the description of SA. But once that has happened, the context is added to it, right? So we could not use that, but in your mind, that does play into it, right? So it is very interesting. And I do think that we talk, investigative journalism, we understand that media is powerful in its ability to influence depending on the way things are packaged and presented. But I also just think that that's the world that we're in. I had a meeting with my publisher today, and we were talking about the most important platform, the most important information system, in persuading people and how they think is media, So I think that documentaries are part of media, and they are also the most, probably at this point, things that on a website are the highest traffic is always true crime, right? So crime is a lot more popular and has a lot more hits than even entertainment, or sports or anything that is definitely the things that we love, like those cultural, pieces. They do nothing compared to true crime. So, and I'm talking about just murder, like murder. When people are, gun violence and things like that, those pieces get a lot more traffic. We enjoy watching crime documentaries, crime shows. Those are more popular. So I think when you add media to that, it becomes very, very influential. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of that, because there are a lot of times that people are doing things that don't necessarily fit outside the scope of the law. I think we saw that a lot with the Diddy trial. It's like, okay, we watched this man beat this woman and kick her in the hallway. We've seen a video of that. But he is not on trial for domestic violence, because domestic violence is, there's a statute of limitations on that. So he can't be tried for that, which is ridiculous, because I think everybody watching that tape said he needs to pay for that. But the law would not allow that because of state statute of limitations. But the viewer and the public, when they see that, oh, they're charging you with that, right? I'm not going to ever be able to unsee that video. I don't think anybody that saw it will be able to unsee that video. But he could not be tried on domestic violence. You know what I mean? So it's interesting what journalism is able to do. And if it affects the legal system, it did with R. Kelly. There were many, many, many lawyers that had tried to get him. Many of the victims were able to be paid off and drop their cases. But a journalist that doesn't have any dog in the fight as far as money is concerned is going to keep digging, because they want to get that story. So I think it's going to change. I think a lot of things are going to change. And, the years coming forward with how we look at things and how things are processed. I think a lot of cases have been retried based on exposure through the media. I think Britney Spears, her conservatorship was basically released because of fans shedding light on it. Now, do I think it should have been? No. Obviously, I think all of us can agree that Britney Spears needed to be under conservatorship. But, when fans started to complain, and there was a documentary, I think it was on Hulu, done a few years ago, then they were able to get that released. It has not worked for Wendy Williams. But I just think that media is powerful and journalism is powerful. Telling stories is important. I do think there needs to be some objectivity. I worry about a world where media is inherently biased based on who has more money or who has more power. I think that's very dangerous. But I also am not sure there's anything we can do about that at this point. I think we've seen that on social media. I think that, Mark Zuckerberg has acknowledged that and anyone that owns, social media sites have, it's been clear that they don't allow their family or friends those people that they're in charge with to be a part of it. So I think the information that we're getting on social media is very biased, and it's very dangerous when you are only seeing information that you agree with, or that pushes you further into a polarization and a silo. I think that's very dangerous, for just the world, right? Our world, and how people view things when there's not true objectivity, and people are being influenced and prodded and pushed manipulated, that can be very dangerous. But here we are, and we're moving into 2026. And I think that's just where we are. If you, as a part of the XO family, could let me know something that you want to leave in 2025, let me know what that would be in the comments. What would you leave in 2025? What are you wanting to drop off and leave? I definitely, as I told you guys earlier, am a Black woman that is tired of being brought into conversations that don't involve Black women. I am over it. When it comes to politics, when it comes to gender issues, we are tired, and I am one of the ones that is tired. I don't think that Black women should take on the responsibility of others. I think that seeing so many Black women be in leadership positions and be used as tokens of different industries to benefit others and not ourselves, it is discouraging. And I think that we have been used by everyone around us, from white women to uphold their feminist fight, to Black men, to, when there's a racial issue, they want us to fight for them. I just think that we are the constant token, and I think we are tired. And I, for one, am ready to release that burden. So if you're watching this live, please let me know in the comments before you leave what you are leaving in 2025. And if you're watching the replay, let me know also, what are you leaving in 2025? What are you tired of seeing? What are you tired of hearing? I also want to leave the narrative of the strong Black woman is not attractive and can't get a man and is unwanted. I'm also leaving that conversation in 2025. I'm also leaving behind that Black men are not valuable unless they are, unless they make over six figures plus. I am leaving behind the idea that value and worth is connected to a monetary value for anyone. And so I do think that I am tired as a woman of hearing that from other women. And I am tired of hearing Black men say they're being judged unfairly. I think that's unfair. And I think we need to leave that in 2025. Lastly, I would like to leave cancel culture. Even though I am not in agreement with Nicki Minaj, I don't believe that any person has the ability to cancel another human being that is outside of your God-given right. And in the words of Tupac Shakur, only God can judge me. And we need to stop doing that to one another. And lastly, I'm with Hey You There. Leave the whole damn year. I think 2025 was traumatic for a lot of us. And I am believing for a much more productive and progressive and positive year for all of us. I want to thank you guys again, every one of you, like I said, for the comments, for the negative, for the check. When you guys check me, when you guys agree with me, when you champion me, I appreciate all of it. This is a safe space for me, and I'm very appreciative and don't take anyone's comments or anyone's views for granted. I definitely appreciate all the support from this channel and the fact that so many of you, I look forward to your names in the chat and you're there all the time. Like I said, we are really like family. So I thank you. I appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing you guys in 2026. All right. Have a good night. I will see you guys Wednesday with Scorpio Mo. We're going to be hanging out for New Year's Eve. So hopefully you guys will find some time for us in your schedule right here at 8 o'clock on Wednesday. I love you guys for watching. Thank you so much. Love is Mimi. Let me know in the comments what you think of the commentary. Sharon Moore, Diddy, 50 Cent, Nicki Minaj, Dave Chappelle, and all the other topics that we have covered talking about Black excellence. Love you guys. See you on Wednesday.